Welcome to Navigating Life with Vision Loss, an Aftersight original podcast. In each episode, we share stories, insights, and practical advice to help you navigate the journey of living with low vision or blindness. Together, we'll embrace each step with courage, grace, and hope.
Hello, this is Kim Wardlow. I am your host for NLVL. I'm glad you're able to join us today. We are getting towards the end of our series, heading into our last month of our series on advocacy and covering various topics of advocacy. Today's topic is social media for change. So advocacy in the digital age. Going to look at how social media has become a transformative tool for advocacy, education, and community building within the blind and low vision space, offering unprecedented opportunities for connection and awareness. So today, my guest for today is our own Evan Starnes, who is our lead audio technician, but also is the host of Blind Level Tech. So most of you probably know him from that. So welcome, Evan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So Evan, I know that you are, active a lot in the digital space and with advocacy and other things, just communicating that way. How did you become passionate about digital advocacy? And why do you think and how do you see social media playing a role in amplifying marginalized voices?
Ooh, this is a good one. I'll try to keep this not long-winded. Probably going to fail at that, but that's okay. As I've been involved in technology most of my life, as far as social media and platforms like that, I kind of got in later on, but I really started first on Twitter, actually, is really where I first started just testing the waters with social media. And this is kind of where my passion began to take off. I realized that, especially on Twitter, particularly at the time, and this is back in 2017, that there were a lot of blind folks on there, blind low vision folks, and it was a whole little community. It felt like, at least to me, and I kind of got the impression that it was kind of where people went after being shut out by the sighted world, and I found it was a really good place to get information about anything, like good tools for productivity or just to vent about a particularly annoying issue that one's dealing with. And I found that just beneficial for, I guess, me as a young blind individual to kind of know that I'm not alone when it comes to these experiences, especially as a blind person. And that really is kind of when my passion took off. And then, I got Facebook. And Facebook is, I'm mentioning these platforms specifically, but Facebook is one of, a few that really you get to, both through its algorithm and also just, through meeting people, you get to find and meet a lot of people that are maybe on the same page as you or have had different lived experiences. But I found it to be a really good place to where not only where blind and low vision people connect, but where also the, sighted friends and family connect as well, and also organizations. So I found it to be a really good place to, I'm thinking of the word vent, but express my frustrations about issues I might be having, like issues with rideshare driver, a big one, rideshare drivers denying service animals in Ubers and Lyfts. That was all over social media. And I found that being able to have, productive discussions in the comment sections and even have like shared videos and stuff of these scenarios was super beneficial. So I kind of jumped on that bandwagon myself, and yeah, that's kind of how we got to, I guess, where we are now.
How do you see that social media has reshaped advocacy in terms of allowing real-time engagement and broader outreach? I know you mentioned it's a great place to vent, and I think we see that a lot. But oftentimes
yes.
it's in real time.
Well, and that's the thing. So, like, let's say, before social media, that there was something, let's say that you live in a city that they have inconsistent and inaccessible street crossings. Before social media, what would you do? You'd probably write a letter to the city, hope that somebody heard it. Maybe even like trying to find like support groups. Like there were groups and clubs out there, and they'd meet, and they would help you through things or through issues, or you could reach out. You'd probably reach out to like like a national organization that works or is affiliated with blind people. But there wasn't really a way that it was very general. You couldn't. It was harder to give specific examples. There was a lot more. I hope they respond to me. And you couldn't. It was harder to get other perspectives on the issue itself. And I feel like, and again, this can be a double-edged sword, but I really feel like social media has made it really easy for people to find groups. Groups, I think, are very vital as far as getting an issue solved. If we're in this instance here, and I feel like it's made it easier for somebody that might not necessarily even, because I talk about like writing a letter to a company or calling. Not everybody necessarily wants to do that or has the bandwidth or skills or even the time to do that. And sometimes it is just easier to just go on, go on a platform and tag whatever company or entity you're speaking to. And usually, somebody will see it, but besides somebody else seeing it, other people, in the community see it, and they kind of, it's kind of that sense of, well, wow, they're sharing about this issue. I could be sharing too. And here's a problem I'm having. Why don't I talk about this in my circles? And it helps. I feel like it motivates individuals to express themselves and to speak up, really.
Well, and I'm wondering about just the idea, and I can see pluses and minuses to it, but the idea that, well, something is happening and I'm going to take a video of this. I'm going to take a video, and I'm going to post a Facebook Live, and they're not allowing my guide dog in the car, or whatever it may be. And in some cases that could be a good thing, because then people can see it's happening right then. It's not just you saying something, there's evidence of it. But then I've also heard of folks sort of setting up a video, and you're just hearing them and you're not hearing the others involved, and it's set up in a way to convey a message that's not exactly accurate as well, and can have still really impactful effects, because these things can go viral. So where do you see those types of things where, we post things, or if you had to sit down and write a letter, you might have to really think about the words you use. But if you're just doing something, posting in the moment, taking a picture, doing a video in the moment, might you say something you wish you hadn't posted? Or is that a good point? Or is it good because it's just you're not overthinking it?
And that is a good point, and also a balance, because I mean, obviously, when you get frustrated, you say things that you probably will regret later, most often. But it's also showing that legitimate experiences. It's happening like you said. As with anything, there is a balance to this form of communicating, and I don't. I think it's it's a double-edged sword because yes, this is a great way to get evidence out there, but it's also it's up to the person involved because they have the power to twist the narrative any old way they want to. That's the other thing and you might not necessarily know that they're twisting that. Plus, I mean, the whole concept of being on video, because I think with the advent of the good old smartphone, and now we have meta glasses and cameras in our cars and on our houses, there are just cameras everywhere. You never know if you're going to be on camera. And that is also, I think that is something that it's so new, I mean, we really have only seen this at least to me, within the past like 10, 15 years, that I think we haven't quite figured out how to regulate per se.
Well, and if you're upset with an Uber driver or something, they may not appreciate your videoing them, even though it's making a point.
They might not consent to be on video themselves.
Right.
And then...
And are you responsible for asking? And if they say no, then what are you going to do at that point?
Yeah, like you can remove, if it was a post that you put up, you can remove it. But the thing is, though, is that there's a line here, because I feel like, if it's just a rideshare driver, and if we're using the service animal denial example here, if it's just a rideshare driver, I don't think that is really worth putting on video unless they're particularly, I mean, if they're just absolutely belligerent and making a scene, I mean, everybody else can see that, and they probably also have the opportunity to shoot their own videos. And then I'd say maybe then it might be an okay time but then again, it's a matter of consent. But if it's a particular scenario where it's like it's a public issue, like a protest or a strike, something like that, I would almost say it's inevitable that cameras are going to be filming and rolling, and that content is going to be shared, and it's kind of like, you should expect that.
Right. Yeah, if you're out in the public like that.
And,
So let's talk about the different platforms and which might be best suited for advocacy if you're trying to advocate for a particular cause or piece of legislation, or trying to get a company to change policies or something like that. So let's start with X, or formerly Twitter.
Well, Twitter, formerly, or X, formerly Twitter, I would have said, I think back in 2017, 2018, that was a good way to, you could definitely reach organizations that way. It was, I remember, like, I reached out about something with my Google Home. I didn't even tag Google in it, but I was just like, hey, I'm having this issue with my Google Home, curious if others are having it. But somebody from Google saw that and actually reached out to me on Twitter and said, hey, thanks for bringing this to our attention. We'll resolve this. But honestly, and the unfortunate part is a lot of this stuff changes just because of how new it is, and it's technology that's ever just always evolving. Nowadays, I would not go to Twitter if I wanted to solve a problem or if I wanted to advocate for myself, because unfortunately, Twitter with the way they've rebranded, they have lost, just due to the decisions they've made, they've really lost a ton of the blind, pretty much most, if not all, the blind community. In fact, there's only a select few Used to be you go on Twitter, and if you're following enough blind folks or low vision folks out there, you'll see like a whole feed of just different things, from people, and now you go on, and it's, at least when the last time I scrolled through my feed, and this is my feed, you don't really see much of that. In fact, it's become a lot harder to navigate there, to my knowledge, and I would love to eat my words on this, and I'd love to be wrong, but to my knowledge, there is not a dedicated accessibility team working for X anymore. That got let go, and now that we have, it's a lot more open, and there's a lot less regulation around what goes up there. And I think due to all of those circumstances, people have just, especially the blind community, they have just gravitated away from it big time.
Right. Well, definitely some accessibility issues. What about Facebook or Meta?
So Facebook, while, there might be the company itself as a whole, they've had some weird, there's been some shakiness in the past with just their practices, but Facebook, owned by Meta, it's really the best platform to connect with your community and to share and to really make your voice heard at this time. And what I'm saying now could be different 5 years from now, but yeah, right now, a lot of companies, in fact, I'd say, and this isn't like a set in stone statistic here, but I'd venture to say 9 out of 10 companies out there, including us, have a Facebook and are reachable through that forum. And that's what we really need to do, is kind of reframe how we see these platforms, because I think, a lot of us still see it the way that we've always seen it since their demise, oh yeah, just a great way to share some fun pictures or memes or whatever. But it's now become a way to directly get in contact with a representative from a company. And in fact, you might actually get a more prompt response through social media. I can't believe I'm saying this, than if you were to actually like write them a letter or submit like a complaint form or an email. Yes, exactly. And,
Yeah. What about Instagram? I mean, I think of Instagram as being, not that all of these don't have a visual component, but I think of Instagram being more visually focused than some of the others.
I agree with that. There's some text, elements involved with Instagram, but yeah, it's a lot more. Yeah, you got Reels, but it's a lot more like sharing photos. I feel like Instagram it's more casual in a sense of I would probably put a video of me hiking or going on vacation on Instagram. I'd be more likely to put it up on Instagram than I would on Facebook, mainly because Instagram is more for where the photo and the video tells the story rather than there being an actual like text story or a caption. That being said, that doesn't make it inherently less accessible either. It's pretty accessible. They have an accessibility team. They are collecting feedback from the community. I've participated in some of their studies, and they do have, the ability, both Facebook and Instagram have the ability to describe images, and they allow users to put alt text on their images. And yeah, I feel like, Instagram is more the fun place where you want to talk, or, show your fun vacations and stuff. Facebook not necessarily isn't that, or necessarily, you can still do that, but Facebook's more dialogue based.
And it'd be more suitable for advocacy.
Yeah, I see.
What do you think about LinkedIn?
Oh man, this is my opinion. I will acknowledge that if you have, any sort of job, you benefit from a LinkedIn, so much so. LinkedIn is it's obviously the social media for, this might not be obvious to some. It's the social media for professionals. So LinkedIn is really good for if you're looking for resources for your work. So I would use LinkedIn for advocacy within your workplace. That is where it really shines. Like that isn't to say you couldn't reach out to any company that was on LinkedIn about something that, you need to discuss with them, but it's really useful if you're trying to get a new job, or if you're trying to start a side gig, you want to sell your services, or there are Facebook pages or not Facebook pages, excuse me, but there are pages, company pages on LinkedIn, of course, like Facebook and Instagram. And it's more for talking about your accomplishments in the professional realm, let's just say.
Right. Like we used it ourselves and others when the day that the Disability Rights Advocacy Day was held at the Capitol.
Yeah, we put that on, and
yeah,
and the thing with these platforms generally too that really helps, I feel like, as far as getting the word out, is the ability to repost.
Yes.
And that's regardless of whether it be Facebook, X, even stuff we haven't talked about like Mastodon or Instagram, LinkedIn, like all of that. You never know what could be reposted.
Do you use TikTok at all?
I do use TikTok. And
do you think it's a platform that's good for advocacy?
I don't, not as much. I think it's a good platform if you want to maybe learn more about specific communities. There are blind TikTokers. There's quite a few blind TikTokers out there. And it's more for, I think it's better for if you want to hear other people's stories and experiences per se. And share your own. And maybe that is in some sense a form of advocacy. But I feel like when it comes to dealing with particular issues, I don't think I would use TikTok, for that. I think it's more of a, this is the community that you're a part of. And, it's more of a story sharing platform as opposed to a communication and business kind of platform.
Right. And then YouTube.
YouTube. So YouTube is the kind of the weird thing because it has characteristics like TikTok, but the thing is, it's I think the differentiator here is that it's been around since 2005. So it's had long enough that it is now become basically a wealth of information, or an information. People use YouTube to answer questions and find things out more than they would do a Google search in some cases. I think, honestly, YouTube is a fantastic way to advocate. It's not for everybody. Like it's more suited for the video centric folks out there that are willing to make a blog, or you can put posts up, but they won't necessarily. It doesn't work like Facebook where they're going to pop up in everybody's feeds, and where the algorithms are going to like direct folks, and you can't really repost content off of YouTube. It's just not the way it works. But let's say you wanted to film yourself at disability rights, at the Capitol at Disability Rights Advocacy Day. I'd definitely be something that would be worth putting up on YouTube, just as a statement per se. But it's it's a good place to put evidence. Let's just say that.
Okay. And are there others? I know you mentioned Mastodon. Are there other platforms that you think are particularly well suited for blind and low vision individuals?
Honestly, Mastodon is really the next best thing. And I feel like Mastodon is where all of the people on X went. The tough thing with Mastodon though is that it's open. So it's up to, rather than it being under one big roof or one big server, you don't just have like it's not just, Instagram.com/@Evan or whatever. It's dependent on what server you're on, and
right, there's different groups kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Different groups, and those different groups have different rules and different community styles. So what I'd say for Mastodon, if you don't have it, it's kind of a matter of, it's easier if you know at least one person that does have it. Or if you know if you know what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking to predominantly follow blind people, maybe you'll want to find a blind, a blind centric server, such as like, I'm on like dragonscave.space. That's one of them. But, if you want to just get on Mastodon and just go find, celebrities or influencers or just kind of the more average Joe Schmo, you might want to create a profile on Mastodon server, official server, mastodon.social. And so it's unfortunately a little complicated to explain, I feel like, but.
Okay. Do you have tips for folks of how they can maximize their use of social media specifically for advocacy efforts?
Well, specifically for advocacy efforts, just be aware of the issue that you're advocating for, the people that it impacts, and the people involved in your advocacy effort. And that could be anybody. That could be a Lyft driver. That could be somebody that was in the angle of your camera when you're filming, if you're filming a video. And also know what you're rightful to do, because there are like states like I think California that are or it's a consensual thing. Like if somebody doesn't give you the right to film them, you could be in some serious trouble. So yeah, just know where and when you can collect information and distribute it. And also don't be afraid to put something out there. Like, even if it might sound controversial, as long as it's not like blatantly saying something about a particular minority or group that, and that is kind of, I'm just going to leave that up to the judgment of the user itself, of the poster. But, or if you don't express about an issue that you have been having, or if you don't talk about a particular topic, see, this is where it gets hard, because you could be the motivation for others to speak up about something that they've been having. But then again, then it's kind of that matter of just, I guess, biting the bullet, per se.
Well, and you mentioned things being reposted and making it something easily repostable or attractive to repost.
Yeah.
What about like hashtags or other ways to kind of raise awareness, or viral campaigns, things that really catch on?
I'm glad you brought up hashtags. Hashtags, especially in the blind community, there's a lot of talk about them, because a lot of people in the blind community use hashtags, but sometimes they can be overused. And when you're reading, we're gonna get really technical here. When you're like looking through social media posts, especially if you're doing it with something like a screen reader, you have to listen to all of these hashtags. So you might be listening to this post and you'll hear hashtag advocacy, hashtag advocacy, hashtag blind, hashtag accessible, hashtag cane, hashtag. There's just all these hashtags eventually it just becomes a bunch of nonsense. So I think at least my rule of thumb, try not to do more than 3 hashtags on a post, just because try to let the 3 hashtags that you put really summarize the content of your post. So, if you're posting a vacation photo, hashtag fun, hashtag the location that you're in, hashtag Hawaii for some reason. I guess that comes to mind. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And if you're putting that post out there because you want to make a statement that, hey, I'm low vision and look at me, I'm independent on vacation, then hashtag low vision or hashtag blind. And that's it. Like, I think there's a balance to the usage of them. I don't think they're necessarily a bad thing. I think right now they're overused, though.
Okay, that's good input.
Mm-hmm.
We hear a lot about how social media can be divisive or promote divisiveness, but how can social media foster collaboration and mobilize communities when they're pushing for change?
And in that sense, it's kind of a matter of, you'd mentioned reposts actually a few minutes ago, and yeah, reposts, groups, stuff like that makes it literally is just getting the information out there and into people's minds. It's not necessarily, because I'll kind of go back to what I'd said, don't be afraid to post something out there, especially if you're passionate about it. But it also kind of makes it easier for somebody that might be more timid about posting or talking about a particular subject. Maybe you'll give them the words that they needed to actually talk about this issue. If you put your content out in a non-rambly, direct, professional format, you're likely going to see reposts of your posts, and those posts might end up in groups. And that's the thing about, I keep mentioning groups. Let's just use some examples here from Facebook. There, for instance, there's like groups of people there's actually a group of ALEXA smart speaker users, and there's a group for people to post memes for the blind that are accessible. Like, if you know that those groups are out there and that your post benefits those groups, this is where actually I think this is when it's necessary to tag people and to tag groups. And if you tag them, then they also get to, they have the benefit of being able to interact with the people that see that post that mentions them, if you know what I mean.
Can you think of an advocacy campaign that you've seen online that you thought was particularly effective?
While I don't like to do this, I am going to reuse an example that I've used a couple of times during this podcast, and that is that's the service animal denials. That, honestly, it really started with people just, if they see that their driver is denying them because of a service animal, they'll whip out their phone and start filming it, or they'll put a post out. That it really started because of that, and then those posts got the attention of larger organizations that work with and are affiliated with the blind and low vision community. And so it's kind of a grassroots effort, let's just say. I actually like that term. And it was able to eventually lead to strikes and protests and those protests were actually directed at the rideshare companies themselves. So I think in that event, like I feel like the grassroots effort is key here. And at least from my time on social media, that was one of the few instances where I saw somebody or, a couple of people post about an issue, and then it got picked up and then basically redistributed until it eventually reached the ears of the originators of the problem itself.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen any recent trends or changes in the platforms or digital advocacy that you think are particularly beneficial for the blind community?
Yes. This isn't super as new as it has been, but alt text and image descriptions. I think that has been one of the biggest things that I've seen as a trend on these platforms that has really been kind of a game changer for us, that, especially if we're totally blind, using platforms like Facebook and Instagram. I think I don't want to use this term too much because it's a huge buzzword, but the advent of AI has made it easier for content to be automatically and clearly described. And there, AI can hallucinate, of course, but I think I've also seen platforms like Mastodon that actually will say, if you're going to post an image without alt text, they'll actually put a warning. It'll warn you, like, this image does not contain alt text. Would you like to place some? Here's a suggestion. And that is a trend I've only really seen on Mastodon, but I would like to see that more on, I think we might start seeing that more on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not really sure about X. There's not a ton of, X is a lot more text based than photo based. That's one of them. I have noticed as well that a lot of these new platforms are deplatformed, or they're decentralized. So like I talked about with Mastodon, Mastodon's obviously not the only one out there. I'm thinking that we're going to start to see more platform, a wider or a larger use of these platforms, like Mastodon. There's another one called Blue Sky that I didn't mention because it's like Mastodon, but I think we're going to see a lot more decentralization, and that has its ups and its downs too, because it's a matter of it's a matter of data being collected and how much, but it's also a matter of the type of content out there, and it actually it does, in a way, it make it easier to put out misinformation, and it won't be caught and taken down.
Right. Are there other, you've mentioned alt text, obviously, audio descriptions. Are there other tools or best practices that can help make content more accessible, more inclusive?
Yes. Definitely want to just reiterate the hashtag thing, or the usage of hashtags. Yeah. Don't overuse, if you're posting to an audience that is blind or low vision, don't overuse hashtags, or try not to. And also, it does help if your post is well written. If you just put out a rambly rampage of just words, you don't punctuate, or, it's just this big long run on sentence, odds are people are going to see that, and then they'll tune out after about, especially if you're reading it with a screen reader, you'll tune out after about 30 seconds and scroll on to the next thing. But if you keep the issue that you're talking about, or whatever the subject is, short, and I always say 3 is the magic number when it comes to social media. 3 key points, 3 hashtags, I think that, I feel like that will lead to better engagement and, more views too, because that's the thing. And I think this is a good and bad thing, is that social media, a lot of people are concerned with how many views or likes or reposts does this post get. And I think, if you do those, wow, I think 3 practices, I guess we could say: hashtags, alt text and images, and writing style. You'll likely see more engagement on your posts, and it will make it easier for you to establish your platform and make your voice heard.
And it makes things more clear to the individual reading it. I mean, obviously, some of the platforms may restrict you in how long you can be, but keeping things short and clear, sometimes that's harder to have something that's very short and to the point. Sometimes that actually takes a little bit more thought to put together than something longer. But having things be really clear for the reader, I'm sure would be beneficial in the others sharing that post.
Well, like when you talked about somebody being frustrated and putting out a post when they're in that state of frustration versus now, if you're frustrated, you're probably just going to be a lot more rambling all over the place. I can objectively say.
Mm-hmm. So individuals aren't the only ones posting and putting things out on social media. Of course, organizations, as you mentioned, Aftersight, we have accounts, social media accounts that we use, and other for-profit businesses as well. Why should a business pay attention and make things accessible when it might seem easier to them just to put the post up and not bother with all text or describing something that they're posting?
This is a loaded question, but to keep it simple, by not doing that, by not making your content accessible, you are shutting out a big portion of the community that, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be benefit the blind or low vision community. You're just shutting out a part of the community. And and honestly, I think it's if you're a business, odds are you probably want to get clientele, or you want to get your voice out there. And by not spending that extra time, especially if you're an image, if you post a lot of images and stuff, by not spending that extra time, people just, they see that, and it also reflects especially if this is an organization, it reflects badly on the organization posting the content. Because if you do it enough, people are going to kind of just associate, oh, this is, especially if you're a company that promotes accessibility, it's not going to look very good on you as a company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's kind of a public relations component to that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Can businesses and organizations be held accountable for improving accessibility online, or we're just trusting that they'll be good online citizens? Right
now, just because of the way social media is, I think we are just trusting. That doesn't say you couldn't, hold them accountable, but if it comes down to trying to get the issue in the hands of the company, or even in the hands of the social media platform itself, it's not as easy as it would be, if it were like a blatant accessibility issue at a company itself.
Right. Or even a website, because companies are supposed to have accessible websites, but obviously not all do. And It doesn't seem like that's been highly enforced, even though it's
and a lot of the stuff isn't being enforced. Like we have regulations that say, they're more suggestions rather than enforcements,
right,
per se.
So you've mentioned that the example of the rideshare and service animals, guide dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other cases where you feel like social media is really amplifying the voices of blind advocates?
Yes, actually. I think some other examples, like, because there are, I'm sure at the moment, at the time of this recording, I cannot think of similar examples to the rideshare issue, but there are other organizations or even just people that are putting out content that might benefit the blind or low vision community. Let's talk like podcasters. Your podcast is your platform. It's a way for you to make your voice heard and people listen to it. But where social media comes into play is redistributing that podcast. And especially if it's a podcast that talks about, even like this podcast.
Right. And just to raise awareness of the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in that, and that is in and of itself a form of advocacy.
What do you think are the best ways for individuals to use their own personal experiences to create lasting impact online?
It's honestly, it's up to you. It's up to the person. It's up to your comfort level. It's really up to like how much what are you comfortable putting out there? Because the biggest rule that you have to really keep in mind, and I think we've all heard this, especially, is that what you put out there is there forever. And you never really know whose hands it will land in. So just know, just know what do you want to talk about your issues with, or do you want to talk about your experiences growing up as a blind person? Or do you want to talk about something completely different? Like, do you have a hobby that you want to share a lot about? Maybe talk about that. And I think the other thing too is it is important, and I'm actually surprised I didn't think about this initially. It is important to also have a nice, like, a bio, and that really helps people make the judgment as to what they want to read and whether they want to follow you or not. And I'd say for anybody,
it gives some credibility if
exactly,
people see, well, that you have this lived experience or you have professional experience, why they should pay attention to what you're posting.
Yeah, think of it like your informal resume, sort of.
There's been a lot of controversy over misinformation on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy for things to get heated online and people making comments back and forth. If somebody sees something on social media that they believe is misinformation, do you have guidelines or best practices for responding to that or pushing back on something that you feel is not correct?
No, absolutely. Yes, misinformation is prevalent. Here's the thing. If somebody posts something that you don't agree with, or you realize it's just blatantly wrong, and especially if it could impact a community at large, I think, in this, from my view, the worst thing you can do is put them on blast on your social media. And it might fix the problem, but also at the same time, it might deplatform the original poster. And in some cases, you do want that, especially if they are consistently putting out misinformation. And I think this is the balance here: is if there is a creator that just consistently just putting out obvious misinformation and just obvious nonsense, then again, it might not be as detrimental if you were to put them on blast. But what you really ought to do is report the post. And if you report the post, it makes the moderators, especially if you report the post in a group, the moderators are aware of it, and the admin of that particular social media platform are aware of it and can review it. I will say nowadays, though, a lot of it does go through some sort of AI instead. but it's still a matter of doing it versus not. The worst thing you could do is just leave that misinformation out there to be discovered. The second worst thing you could do is just just publicly put them on blast in your circles without even, giving them a leg to stand on. And the best thing you can do is just directly report the post. And if reporting them, if that doesn't work, if you're just not getting anywhere, don't necessarily put them on blast. It's a matter of, this is my experience. This has been my experience with this entity. I find their content to be misleading, and I'm afraid it could cause a negative impact on the blind community, as opposed to, this is a horrible entity, stay away from them. It's the tone and the language that really makes the difference.
And if you are using social media for advocacy purposes and you have an advocacy campaign, what are some of the key metrics to track if you're trying to measure the success of your campaign?
I would, typically I'd say, the best analytics to track would be the ones that a lot of people track on social media, that being views and interactions. So that interactions being, likes, or some platforms like Facebook allow you to leave other little emoji style reactions, like a heart or an anger, like a raised fist, I think is what it is, or just various emotional or various reactions, or comments. Comments are another good gauge for how your content is doing. So I feel like that, in a sense, that's one way to gauge it. But what I've realized, especially from doing a podcast and, just from putting out content on, social media on occasion, is it might not necessarily be the quantity of the engagement that you're getting. It's more of the quality of the engagement you're getting. And this is where you really have to ask yourself, how much would I rather just try and rack up views and just try and get as many people involved as possible? Or if this is a particular issue, do I want to get a more dedicated group of followers? Because I feel like a smaller group of followers doesn't, or a larger group of followers doesn't necessarily depict how dedicated they are. They might just follow you because, they want to, just because, like, they saw you and they found you interesting, but they don't necessarily really care about your content.
Right.
Whereas, there are, if you have more dedicated group of dedicated followers, they're putting your content out, or they're at least reading it and absorbing it. And especially, and this isn't the case for everybody, but if you get to a point where people are talking about your content in their community, like just in person or even in other groups, that is definitely, at least to me, a good way to measure success.
Well, thank you, Evan. That's such great information and helpful for folks who are trying to maybe go beyond just using social media, for vacations or
casual stuff.
What they had for dinner, or all the different things we post, our birthday parties, all those things that we post, and try to use it to make an impact in their communities. Just to recap a little bit, you said no more than 3 key ideas, no more than 3 hashtags, and be mindful of your content and punctuation in your writing so that
Try
it's
not to ramble,
clear and understandable. Am I missing something?
No, but
Those are the things.
I think the biggest key takeaway, when it comes to literally just allowing others to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your voice as it is. Nowadays, like today's day and age, social media is probably the easiest, most convenient, and most effective way of allowing your voice to be heard.
I agree. It's there, and it's open, and if the platforms are accessible, then that's a good way to be able to share your thoughts and to find others that have that same viewpoint, to be able to work together as a group.
Absolutely.
Do you want to share where our listeners can find you or follow you, and maybe even give a shameless plug for BLT?
Well, I'm always happy to give a shameless plug for BLT. So if you want to listen to BLT, we are on all of the major streaming platforms, including but not limited to Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, just like Navigating Life with Vision Loss. So if you're listening to Navigating Life with Vision Loss, it's super easy to find BLT. Where we don't have a dedicated social media page for BLT, but we do. If you search for, if you're on Facebook and you search for the hashtag Blind Level Tech or hashtag BLT, you'll find us that way too. If you want to find me on social media, I'm not as active as I once was on things like Facebook, mainly because I found it cumbersome. But I do go on and repost other people's content, and especially if it's an issue that I'm passionate about, man, you betcha I'm going to repost it. So you can find me on Facebook if you at Evan Starnes, or if you I'm on LinkedIn, and if you're on Mastodon, search for I can't even remember my own username. That just shows at evdog1245 at dragonscave.space is where you can find me on Mastodon.
All right. So taking a little bit of a social media, maybe not a full break, but a little bit of a pullback from constantly being on social media. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And of course, you can find Aftersight, our organization, on Facebook and
Instagram,
LinkedIn. So we are out there as well. And next week, we are going to be talking about youth advocacy. So advocating for our youth, but also teaching our youth to advocate for themselves. So that will be, and Dr. Charles Powell will be joining us for that. So be sure to listen to next week's episode in our advocacy series, as we're kind of winding down here in this last month. But we hope that this information today and in our advocacy series in general helps you to navigate your life with vision loss.